Hi everyone, we're going to break up this week's labs into a few little chunks and take them one piece at a time. So the first one we're going to talk about displaying wetlands and how to use unique symbology to more easily visually represent different attributes. So Mr. Bolstead recommends starting with a new project and a new map. I think with ArcGIS Pro, where you can have lots of maps and lots of layouts, there's no reason to start a new project for something that's in the same area and where you're kind of continuing along with the same themes. So I'm not going to do what he says, and I'm just going to go ahead and insert a new map. So here's my map from last week. I'll go to the Insert tab. I'll say New Map. If I want to change something about this map, I can right-click on it and look at its properties. And I can go ahead and give this map a new name. So I'm going to call it Wetland Map because that's what we'll be adding to it. I can change my default map units. I can change the background color, and there's other options that we can go through at another point. But you have some control over your map layout right there. So I've added a new wetland map. I'm going to add data to this map. Hopefully you have downloaded the data for the first two labs into a place that you can continue to use, storage that makes sense to use. So navigate to that folder. For me, it's under Lab Materials, lab number 1, and we're going to add the wetlands shapefile. And it should look like this once you get it added. For the wetlands, we're going to change up our symbology method a little bit. So before we were using a single symbol, and remember you can get the symbology either in your tabs over here, or you can right click on your layer and go to symbology, or there are some ways that you can get into it from the menus. Either way, it'll bring up your symbology tab. You're going to change from a single symbol per layer to unique values. And what this lets us do is use the attributes from our attribute table to change the way our file is displayed. So we talked about attribute tables in our lecture a little bit this week. Looking at the attributes for the wetlands file, you can see that each of the polygons in this file has a couple of things. The first being just called attribute, probably not the most useful name. The second referring to the wetland type. You'll see there's some connection here. Generally, they're grouping one type of wetland and then giving a little bit more detail in this one. So we're going to use these grouped layers, and we'll do that by changing our unique value field to wetland type. And I'm going to go ahead and close this attribute table so I have a little more room. You'll notice that it automatically applies this really beautiful color scheme. It is a random color scheme. There's a number of different types, but we'll just use random today. So you can change that color scheme to any other random type color scheme, and you'll notice it instantly assigns colors. If you want to just kind of bulk flip through some options there, every time you change and then come back to that, you get a new random selection of colors that Esri will automatically apply for you. So that's one quick way to play with your colors. For us, we're just interested in wetlands today. So what I recommend doing for the uplands layer, which is what U stands for, you can either click on the symbol here, or you can do it directly from your contents menu, and you'll bring up the same familiar stuff we were looking at last week. So if you go into your properties, for the uplands, you can assign no color to that layer, and then apply that, and all of a sudden your uplands area has disappeared. So that's one way that we can apply styles. I'm also going to show you another way that wasn't covered in the methods that Mr. Bolstad gave, which is to import a style file. So I have loaded in our shared Google Drive under Labs, week 2, a style file. And I'm going to download this file to my downloads folder, but then I'm going to move it somewhere a little bit more useful, which for me is going to be the folder where I, let's see, store my project data. So for me, that's in local GIS, ArcGIS. And I went ahead and made myself a folder called styles, or you can drop it into your current project folder, which for me is still lab 1. I'm going to just go ahead and put it right there so I can find it again. And then I'm going to look at my catalog. You'll notice in my catalog there's some default styles and then the favorite style. And then if you want to add a new style, you go to Add Style, not a system style, just a regular old style. And then I'll go find that folder where I stored that and add this style that I just downloaded. And now you can manage that style and look at what's included in it. So here I have some standard color patterns used by Fish and Wildlife in their National Wetlands Database, which is something that I, as a wetlands mapper, like to use in my maps. And then I can go to my back to my map. First of all, I was over my catalog. I can go to each of these layers now that I have this style added and look in my gallery, and I have those styles loaded in my gallery. So I had selected L, which is the lake layer, and I'm going to call that lacustrine. If I want to move on to the next one, I can just come over into my catalog and click. You want to see this kind of flash at you. Sometimes it doesn't seem to switch layers immediately, but then we'll just apply the color to the next one. And now I'm going to go to my PEM layer. I have another color here for forested and scrub shrub layers. So when I get to my forested layer, I'm going to switch colors. And I'll do the same thing for scrub shrub. Unfortunately, they chose to keep using P for pond. So these are pond layers. And a few of them didn't get grouped, so we'll just make them all the same color. And voila, we have a wetlands map that looks very similar to how you would see it in the National Wetlands Database. So now I want to create a layout for this map, and we won't go into a lot of detail on things that we've already covered, but I do want to show you how you would make a legend for this layer, because it's obviously going to be a little bit different than something that just has a single style. So for this, we will insert a new layout, and you can make it whatever size you want. For this one, will go ahead and do an 8.5 by 11 portrait layout. And once you've added that new layout, you'll add your new map frame. Since I have multiple different maps in this project, I want to make sure that I'm adding the map that I just made. So that was the wetland map. And I'm going to take the easy way here and go ahead and add the current extents of that layout. and I'm learning a new mouse, so bear with me. I want to see my extents. I want to insert my map frame. And for the sake of time, I'll just gruff it in right there. And there I have my new map frame. Now I want to add a new legend to this to show what these layers represent. And it automatically adds all of the layers in the existing map. And when I want to edit that, I can select this as an element, go to my elements pane, which was hiding down here in the corner, and start editing that legend. So there are a couple of pieces of this legend that aren't really that great to look at. First of all, the title legend is not appearing, so you can just go ahead and click that on. Now it says legend, or you can name it something more useful, should you choose. You'll notice this wetland types doesn't really communicate to the general public what you're trying to show here. So one of the things you can do is rename that. It won't change your file names, but it will change it in your view, in your map, and in your layout. So we'll go ahead and change that to full words wetland types. You'll notice there's still a couple of other things that maybe I don't want to show in my legend, just to simplify things. This wetlands doesn't really add a lot of interest to our legend there. So what we can do is go in, and that is the layer name. So we can uncheck layer name. I don't want to remove my heading because that's my descriptive term, so I'll leave my heading there. I do want my labels for all of my different units. If I don't want to show things that aren't within my map, I can click this only show features visible in the map extent, and that goes ahead and removes anything we're not using right now. If you had a need, you could show the number of features that match that term, and then you can always also play with some of the spacing for your legend items there. So there are other options that you can feel free to play with. I wouldn't mind if there was a little bit more of a gap around certain items, so I can increase. Oops. That's only going to work if it has a color. That gives a white background, so we're no longer hiding things. It's not going to have a border when the item isn't selected, but if you wanted to add a border, you could do that here. And you'll notice we still have this U hanging out. If you wanted to make that go away, what you would need to do is visit the symbol for that item. And remember that we had a set of unique values that included everything that was within our attribute table, but we don't have to include everything. We can go in here and remove that from our list of values. You can just hit delete and it'll take it out. It still has all other values, which it's now default using for that. So the only way to remove it from the legend now, since it's included in the area, is to also delete that one. It's important to remember, if this is a table of information that you're going to continue to use, that anytime you add something that does not have this attribute assigned, since you have deleted that all other symbols layer, you will not see them appear in your map, and sometimes that can be confusing. But for us, for this final presentation, that achieves exactly what we'd like to do. So here I have a map that displays the wetlands as I would like them to look, and I have a legend that explains those different colors. And that's the first part of your lab for week 2.